Thank you for joining me today for my presentation. Today I'm going to talk about Yes We Can, within reason, load management for teaching librarians. Load management became very popular the last couple of years after Kawhi Leonard and the Toronto Raptors won the NBA championship in 2019. The term hadn't been that much in the popular conversation until then, or at least I hadn't heard it that much until then. But during the 2019 basketball season, Kawhi Leonard played around 60 games out of the 82 for his team that year, about 73%. He took the time off to help his body recover so that he could play the most important minutes of that season, which are those crucial games, especially in the playoffs. Kawhi and the Toronto Raptors didn't invent load management, but they did utilize it and perfect it during their championship run. What does load management mean? Basically, it means rest, right? So load management, athletes and others use it to determine how often players should work out, practice, travel, and everything else surrounding those game minutes as well. They use caution to help keep players feeling their best, strategize when it's necessary to put additional strain on these world's best athletes. And basically, there's one overriding goal for load management for these teams, is to make sure the players are at his healthiest and at peak fitness when the game matters the most. And that's what Kawhi did that year. He rested during the season for games that maybe didn't matter as much, played some of the crucial games against maybe their top competition and most important games, and then saved up enough energy and saved that wear and tear on his body so that he could play during those crucial minutes during the playoffs and especially during the championship series. But why do I care about burnout? Well, one, because I was a teacher for many years and experienced burnout myself in my own life. Before I became a librarian, I studied elementary and early childhood education in my undergraduate years. And during that time, there was talk about burnout and whatnot, and a little bit of conversation on it, but not a lot. And after I got out into the schools for 3 or 4 years, I experienced it myself. Those hours of getting up very early in the morning, getting to school, setting everything up for the day, and then just the mental and somewhat physical strain of just teaching in the classroom all day, working with young students. I taught 3rd grade mostly during my teaching career, and working with the students was great. I loved it, but the strain of and energy required of doing that, and then taking all the paperwork home to grade at night. And even though, I was grading cursive writing and multiplication tables and spelling tests and that kind of thing, not the most mentally taxing kind of work to grade, but there's a lot of it. When you have 25 students, every day you're doing lessons, every day you're doing assignments, you have quizzes weekly or whatever, it adds up to a lot. And then also lesson planning for the next day. And it all just became a lot. I also had the maybe inopportune timing of doing this during the George Bush administration, which brought in a horrible legislation called No Child Left Behind, which had a great name, but was very ill-conceived, and basically had teachers teaching to the test because standardized testing became a huge component of our life as a teacher. And I was at an inner city school that was pretty low achieving. And so I had to teach from a giant binder of lessons for basically half the year. And so the students had the fear of God put in them that if they didn't pass this test, they couldn't move on to the next grade. And even though that pressure wasn't coming from me, they could feel it from the school, from their parents, from the country itself. So it was a difficult time to be a teacher. So thankfully, after a few years teaching 3rd grade, I had a conversation with a librarian that really changed my career trajectory and my career life. And allowed me to make a choice that is much better for me, since now I can be a librarian and have a teaching component to my job, but it's not my entire job. It's not my entire life. And I also have the luxury of teaching one-shots, which aren't ideal in a lot of ways. But one thing that's nice about them is there's no grading involved, because you see the students one time and then you're done. So, but that's why I care about this topic. I experienced it. I felt that stress of being an everyday teacher, a classroom teacher, and I handled it for a few years, but after that I got out. So a little bit of background information on my institution. I teach at Michigan State University, which is a large Midwestern university, research-heavy university, about 50,000 students, including over 8,000 first-year students, which is the main group that I work with. We have about 90-ish librarians at MSU. We have faculty status. We have a continuing appointment system, which is sort of a parallel to a tenure system. And my job specifically is to lead the teaching and learning team. So we have 6 librarians, 4 of whom this is their primary job, is working with teaching and learning. And then we also have 2 secondary people who have this teaching as a 25% of the job. So as I mentioned earlier, we teach mostly one-shots. MSU has over 8,000 first-year students, most of whom take their first-year writing class. And that is the group that we work with most, is the first-year writing from the Department of Writing, Rhetoric, and American Cultures. They teach hundreds of writing classes each semester, and we work with those with about 200 or so first-year writing classes each year. We have about 4 library classrooms, or classrooms in our library that we use for our instruction, and occasionally we also teach in the students' regular classroom if they want us to. My team also works with a few other groups on campus. So one of the librarians on my team works with the integrative studies group. So she also teaches information literacy classes with those. One librarian works with James Madison Residential College. We have librarians that have expertise and work in digital scholarship and Chicano and Latinx studies as well. So my team basically has 2 missions. The teaching and learning unit has 2 missions, basically to foster student learning by supporting analytical thinking, integrated reasoning, and effective communication through effective use of information. And we target this mission with our instruction. This is sort of our teaching mission. Our second mission is also to be a resource for other librarians in the areas of teaching and learning. So many librarians at MSU teach for their own groups. We have many subject librarians who do information literacy classes for their own groups. And so we're there to support them by doing things like having a community of practice. We have a teaching and learning community of practice. We do peer observation of their instruction. We open our classes for them to come and observe our teaching. We do coaching. So we have a lot of different ways that we try and support the other librarians at MSU who are teaching. So before we get into causes of burnout and some solutions, let's define what we're talking about here. So these are some definitions. Teacher burnout is a psychological condition that leads to exhaustion, depersonalization, and decreased teacher achievement and self-worth. Burnout is a reaction to chronic stress. The effect of teacher morale is often overlooked by policymakers and faculty members themselves. Right? So this is a little bit just defining what we're talking about here with teacher burnout and burnout. What does it look like? Right? What are some symptoms of it? One is exhaustion. This is one that I felt a lot when I was a teacher in the classroom. I would come home and just like pass out on the couch. I would grade my papers. It didn't help that I was so tired from the stress of the day that I wasn't eating very healthy. So I'm sure that contributed as well. You know, I was probably eating a little bit too many McDonald's hamburgers and whatnot during that time. So I was exhausted from teaching, and then I didn't do anything to help improve that as well. You know, I was basically didn't feel like I had any time to exercise or socialize besides the weekends. So I was really exhausted. I would be waking up early, going to school, teaching all day, and coming home and grading papers and planning lessons for the next day into the night when it was time to go to bed and start all over again. Also, symptom is depersonalization. So it occurs when someone separates himself or herself from colleagues, family, friends, right? This happened to me in some ways, but not that much because I was teaching in a new part of the country where I wasn't from. You know, I grew up in Pennsylvania. When I came back, I was a Peace Corps volunteer. I taught English as a foreign language in the Slovak Republic for a couple of years. When I came back from that, I moved to North Carolina. So I was a few states away from where I had grown up, and that's where I was teaching. But it did affect me in the sense that it was hard to make friends other than the teachers that were at the school. You know, like you didn't have a lot of time because you were so involved in the teaching part of it. So I became very good friends with some of the other teachers at the school. But I also didn't feel like I had that much time to do that much socializing. And in your 20s, that might be a time where you're often doing that even more than you may be now in my 40s or 50s or whatever. So also diminished personal achievement, feeling a sense of decreased personal value as though you're incompetent in your career, right? So you don't feel that happiness, that success, that achievement. And I certainly felt that. My school that I was at was a very low achieving school, which meant that they had to follow these guidebooks during the year in order to teach to the test, basically, so the students would be prepared for the achievement test that they would have. About preventing burnout. So some of these are ways that you can help limit teachers that you may supervise or you may work with, or other librarians at your library. Limiting the amount of teaching. So when I came to MSU, the size of our department has increased and decreased over time as librarians have moved into other positions or as we've grown. And we've always tried to limit our teaching. As the head of teaching and learning, most semesters, my goal is for no one to teach more than 25 of the classes. So I think that's a good goal. It doesn't always happen. We've had a few librarians some semesters who've gone into the 30s. Thankfully, we don't get up into the 50s or something like I know a lot of people do. I have friends and colleagues who work at other libraries around the country, around the US, who, pretty frequently go into the 40s and 50s and even the 60s for classes each semester. And they experience burnout, in my opinion, much more easily, much more frequently than librarians who do limit that amount of teaching. So, and that's one benefit we have. Teaching is part of our job, but teaching is not the only part of our job. Almost all the librarians on my team also work on the reference desk and do chat reference. We're also on plenty of committees and groups around the library and around campus that have other aspects to their jobs. We have plenty of other things that we can get involved with. So teaching doesn't take over and control the entire part of your career. Allowing time for other activities and time off. We have a very generous amount of vacation, at least by US standards here at MSU. And so I expect and encourage everyone to take that time off. Same goes for comp time. If we work, our reference desk has a 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock shift at night that you might work once or twice or 3 times during a month. If you have those shifts, then take that time off, during the day. If you came in, at your normal working time, then that's a long day. So you deserve another 4 hours or whatever off a different day. But also utilizing that vacation time. You need to get away. You need to stay away from your email. When you're on vacation, get off your phone, stop looking at your email, and enjoy, your family and friends and life and travel and whatever it is that you're doing. Positive reinforcement through verbal praise. This is something I try and utilize by encouraging people. As the head of the team, I always try and encourage all the other team members, and they know I have an open door policy to chat and talk. And if someone is having a rough semester, if someone has some things going on in their life, then I hope that they will feel comfortable talking to me and letting me know, and then we can make accommodations for that. But I also am a sort of a coach cheerleader on the side that I like to definitely provide that kind of positive reinforcement. Opportunities for socializing. So encouraging those kind of out of work activities, socializing time. Saying no is another thing. And that's part of what I consider part of my job, is to say no. Sometimes we can't accommodate a request for instruction, especially if they don't follow our guidelines for where we ask for about 2 weeks lead time before the instruction session will happen. We bend over backwards to accommodate as many requests as we can, but there comes a limit where you can't say yes to everything. So part of my job is to say no, and I am happy to help other librarians on my team say no if they need that assistance in that. It can be hard, especially if you don't have our version of tenure yet. If you don't have continuing employment, then you may feel a little bit more pressure to do classes and not to say no to people or whatever, to keep piling things on top of other things on your plate, which is not healthy and which could lead to burnout. So I am there to help say no. Meditation, walks, other physical activities. This is something that I encourage, something that I take advantage of. I love taking walks. We have a beautiful river right outside the library that has a walking path on it, and taking some time after lunch or whenever you have a chance during the day to get outside, breathe some fresh air, take a little walk. do some meditation. We have a reflection room at the library that you can also use for this kind of thing. Getting enough sleep, eating and drinking well, this, goes hand in hand with, living some kind of healthy lifestyle. And so that's something that can be encouraged to people as well if they're struggling with burnout or feeling any symptoms of that. So thank you. I look forward to answering any questions when we can do this virtually face-to-face here in a few months. And thank you for coming to my presentation today. I appreciate it. Again, my name is Ben OBERDICK. I'm the head of teaching and learning at the MSU Libraries.